We're off to Makestuff next month, so I thought I'd make this X&O board for Victor's playground so people can have fun and play the game. So we're going to go into the design sheet first of all, just so I can show you what we're actually going to be cutting and the kind of principle of this project. So first of all, we're going to be, obviously you need X&Os for an X&O game, so cutting the X&Os, so we'll do 5 each of those. The grid is basically going to be a slot together grid that's then put onto a base and then aligned with dowel holes, and then we're basically going to use fillets to make the slotting it together easier and a snugger fit. So the first thing I like to do with a project like this is do some test cuts just to make sure that the fillets and the principles of the project, or the key elements, are actually going to work and that it's spot on, rather than cutting loads of stuff and then finding out it doesn't actually work or doesn't fit together. So if we go across to our test sheet, I'll talk you through some of that. So the basic reason for using fillets is because the end mill bit is rounded, so anything that you pocket out or any corners that you essentially pocket or go into, you're going to get a curve instead of the 90-degree corner. So anything that has a 90-degree outline isn't going to fit in that gap just because of the roundedness. So a way around that is basically to use fillets. So for this project I'm going to be using dog bone fillets because they'll slot together the easiest and it will be quite a snug fit. So the first thing you need to do when you're thinking about fillets is go and measure your tool, and basically you want the fillet to be at least half of the diameter of your tool. So I've worked that out to be 3.175 millimeters, which is half the diameter of a 1/4 inch end mill, which is the tool we're going to be using. So basically I can show you on this diagram that this is actually where you're going to cut the pocket. If we didn't use fillets, we can get rid of that and then add the fillet in, and as you can see the corner is going to fit into that fillet perfectly. So what I've done for our test cuts is actually created these crosses basically. So the cross on the left is going to be, we're going to be cutting outside the line. So we're actually going to take that part off the bed or the machine. And then the cross on the right is going to be effectively a pocket, which we're then going to fit the other cross into to make sure that it fits in and it's all snug and the way we want it to be. So if we go around and add our fillets, so for the left cross, the fillets are going to be on these corners because of the right angles of the pocket so that they can fit in. And then basically it's just going to be the opposite on the pocket. So these right angles are going to need to fit into these. So if we go around and add those in, like that. Okay, another thing which I find handy is to make sure that you put the fillets in the right place, is you can put one on top of the other. And basically all of the right angles should actually fit into the fillets. So if we go around and check, and that all looks good. So now what we're going to do is go over to the toolpath tab and create the toolpaths for these test parts. So the cross on the left, we're going to go outside the line, we're going to cut through our material, and we're going to be using the 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to add in 2 tabs just to keep it secure, and that all looks good. If we calculate that, and then we can preview it. So as you can see, that's what we're going to get, and then we're going to take that off the machine and test it in the pocket. So if we go across and do the profile cut for the pocket, so on this one we're going to go inside. We're going to be using the same tool and cutting through the material again, and then we don't need tabs because we're cutting inside and it's effectively a pocket. So calculate that, preview that. So as you can see, we're going to be cutting this one out and then fitting it into this one. So basically at the moment, because we've used the same vectors, it's basically going to cut exactly. So there's going to be no allowance or no wiggle room for the parts to fit together. So what we need to do is add an allowance to each of the toolpaths. In the past, I've used a negative allowance of minus 0.05 for just one part, whereas what I'm going to do is add an allowance to both the parts. So I've halved that allowance effectively to make the full allowance. So if we go into the profile toolpaths, basically you need to go down to the allowance offset and put in whatever you want the allowance to be. So 0.025, calculate that, and then press OK. So what I find handy when doing allowances, just to make sure that you've done it the right way, is you can actually turn on the toolpath preview and zoom in on the vector, and then just check that the tool, so the blue part is where the tool's going to go. So you can see that that gap there is basically your allowance, so the gap between your vector and where the tool is actually going to go. So we go into this one, add the same allowance, so 0.025, calculate that. So we can reset the preview all toolpaths, and that's all looking good. I'll just quickly double check the tool on that one, just show you. So as you can see, the tool's going to go outside of that vector, making the pocket bigger, which is what we want. So that's all correct. Our toolpaths calculated. So next step is to get the wood onto the machine and do the test cuts. Okay, so that test cut worked out really well. It fit in really snug. As you can see, I had to use the mallet to actually get the last part in. So that's way too snug for what we want for this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make the allowance. I'm probably actually going to double the allowance. So it's going to be a much looser fit, so we can move it in and out for when we want to transport it. I'm also so I didn't really like on the design or on the test part where the holes were, where the fillets have been. So what I'm actually going to do is add fillets to all the corners, all the right angles on the file, so that basically it should just be like a jigsaw puzzle piece and it should just fit in without any holes. So if we go back into the file and go to the test sheet again, what I'm going to do is copy the vectors I've already got up. I'm going to go in and add in the extra fillets, so I'm just going to go around. Add them in there as well. I'm going to change this text while I remember, just as an indication of what the allowance actually is, so 0.05. Okay, and then I'm going to go across, and I'm actually going to use the same toolpaths as we used before, but I'm just going to select the new vector. So I'm going to do the left one first. I'm going to go in, I'm going to change the allowance to 0.05. I'm going to move those tabs just so they're the same as before. And then calculate that. Then I'm going to go across to the other one, do the same process, select the new vector, everything else is the same, change the allowance to 0.05, calculate that. We are getting this warning error every time I'm calculating the toolpath. That's just because we're cutting all the way through the material and I'm cutting an extra 0.5 mm through just to make sure that we have cut through. So that's why that warning's coming up. So you can just click OK, because we know that we will cut through the material. So if we reset, preview those toolpaths, as you can see they've got the new fillets in. So I'm just going to select the first toolpath and actually turn on the toolpath preview. So something I did notice was there was some bits, when I looked at the file earlier, there were some bits that the tool actually isn't going to get to. So what I'm just going to do is, just to make it exact or fit, and to make sure that there aren't any holes, I'm just going to put an extra fillet in these just to smooth off these curves. So it needs to be dog bone, and then this just needs to be a normal fillet, just to smooth these out. And then on these we just need to smooth those out as well. So. Okay, that should be all done. So if we just go back over to the toolpaths, double check that we've got the right allowance, that's all good. I need to change the tabs on there. Calculate those. And then go across to the second toolpath and recalculate it. Reset the preview and just preview all those toolpaths. Okay, they're all looking good, and they've got the smooth bit as well. So we're ready to go across to the machine and get cutting again. Okay, now that I've cut those test parts, I'm really happy with the allowance. I had to do it a couple of times just to get it spot on. So I've gone with a loose allowance of minus 0.25 mil and a tight allowance of minus 0.025. So now that we've got the allowances, I'm going to take you through the toolpaths that I've already done for what we're actually going to cut, and then we're going to add the allowances in as we go. So the first sheet I want to take you through is ply 1. So these are basically the slats in between the grid. So on this sheet I've put them at the top because obviously the test parts are on the bottom of this sheet. So if we go into the profile toolpath, so I used a compression cutter, or I'm going to, for all of the profile toolpaths, just so that we hopefully won't get any chipping on the top or bottom of the material. So that'll be good. So this one's on the outside. We need to add in the allowance. So we want the loose allowance to be minus 0.25 mil. And then if we calculate that, and preview the toolpath, cool, that's all looking good. I've added in some tabs as well, just to keep the material in position. Okay, so the next sheet we'll go to is ply 2. So this is basically the bottom board, so the bottom bit, which we're going to actually lay the grid onto. So we've got the dowel holes, and then it's just cut out toolpath. So I'm going to do, one side is going to be snug holes, which we're going to glue the dowels into, and they're going to stay there, they're going to be fixed, and then the other half is going to be loose dowel holes. That way, when we're transporting it or moving it around and we want to put it away, we can actually put one side on top of the other and it will fit quite snug, rather than dowels sticking out all over the place. So if we go into the pocket one, so the snug one is going to be the minus 0.025, and I'm going to cut through the material. They're looking good. So the loose ones are actually going to be minus 0.5. That's because the dowels are a fixed width and we can't have any allowance on those. So we need to double the loose allowance of everything else to make the full allowance, if that makes sense. So that would be minus 0.5 mil. Calculate that. Cut through again. Preview that. That's all looking good. and then the profile cut. So we don't need any allowance on this because this is just going to be the bottom board. It's not going to be slotting into anything. Cutting through the material with a compression cutter. So if we calculate that. Cool, that's all looking good. And yeah, I've added tabs on this one as well. So the next sheet that we're going to do, so these bits will basically make up like the braces of the grid, or the main part of the grid really. So these are the top, the bottom and the two side pieces and the bits that go across the middle. So I'm going to do the dowel holes first and add the allowance. So the snug dowel hole is going to be the minus 0.025. Calculate that. The loose dowel hole is going to be the minus 0.5. So as you can see from the toolpath preview, I haven't got the Z plus 0.5, I've just entered the number, so I'm just going to put the Z plus 0.5 and then it should show up with it cutting through the material. Yep, so that's now cutting through as we'd like. And then it's just the profile cut out. So on this one we're going to need the allowance because obviously we're going to be slotting stuff into these. So what we want to do is we want the loose allowance, so it's minus 0.25 mil for all of those. Because basically we want these bits to be able to be taken apart and put back together. So that's calculated. Need to update that to the Z plus 0.5 rather than the fixed number. That's the good thing about the toolpath preview, is you can see where you either haven't cut through when you wanted to and stuff like that. Cool, so that's all looking good. So on to the next sheet. So we're now getting on to the noughts and crosses for the board. So what we're going to do with the noughts and crosses is I'm going to use, because I want the edges to be kind of rounded over. So because in Cut 2D you don't get the chamfer toolpath, you can kind of do a workaround, which is a profile cut using a V-bit on the line, which will give you that chamfer effect. So what I'm going to do is cut a chamfer or a profile first and then do the cutout. I'm actually going to cut 2 of every one and then stick them together, so it's a double-sided part effectively, which should look really nice hopefully. So if we go into the profile, which would be like the chamfer effect, so I'm using a 60-degree V-bit and it's on the line. Don't need any allowances for this, so we just calculate, preview that, and then the cutout pass, it's just outside cutting through the material, and I've added in the tabs as well, as you can see. Preview those toolpaths. That's all looking good. So we're on to the last sheet. This is noughts and crosses again. So yeah, it's just the last few noughts and crosses. So profile cut with the V-bit, and then the profile cut out, cutting all the way through the material. Cool, so that's all looking good. So I'm going to save off my toolpaths and then jump back onto the machine to carry on cutting. This was a really fun project to make, and it's going to be really good fun playing the X and O game at MakerCentral. We've used the leads and the allowance options. If you do want to use this in your own projects, you'll need to select the advanced toolpath option in your toolpath menu. If you have got a chance, come and visit us at MakerCentral and Victor's Playground. It'd be great fun and great to see you. So to download the files, you'll need to go into your V&Co account. This is a Cut2D Pro, vcarve Pro and Inspire project. Like, comment and subscribe, and if you've got any questions, just leave them below and I'll try and get to them as soon as possible. In the meantime, happy making.